It should suffice to say that this video is pretty long overdue. I was hoping to be around 4 episodes into the series by now, but that's just not how it happened. Regardless, today we're here with the second episode to my guide to competitive deck building, and we're going to be talking about playtesting, which is in many ways the most important part of competitive deck building, because it is the process where you decide which pile of cards you're entering into your regional championship series, etc. One major thing that I would definitely suggest everyone do before they invest into a ton of expensive cards is playtest online. Make sure that the deck that you're planning on buying is what you actually enjoy playing. It gives you the results that you like, and also it can narrow down a lot of the tech cards you're considering and makes it so that you don't end up spending a bunch of money on cuttable cards that you don't really actually think are that good. The other thing that I would say is that once you sort of have a general idea of what you want to play and you do have some physical cards, make sure to go find a local tournament store to play in if possible. I know not everyone has a tournament store near them, but if you do, I highly recommend it. If you have multiple around you, try to find a more competitive one. It is more realistic to the situation that you're going to be in tournaments, having to actually play with physical cards, and the average player is going to be significantly better. A lot of players online really just aren't that good and they aren't great practice because you're essentially playing against bad players who are making mistakes all the time, and you might not get as accurate of a sense of how good your deck is or how well you are playing it. As to the actual process of playtesting, I think the largest point I want to drive home, and one that many players don't adhere to, is that you want to isolate your variables. In other words, you only want to change out and compare 1 or 2 cards at a time, ideally. If you're constantly switching out half the cards in your deck, it's very difficult to ascertain which ones are actually good and which ones aren't. Because if your deck's performance increases or decreases, you don't actually know which cards are causing it to be better or worse. Really consider what cards are being the most beneficial. When you find yourself in a situation using a particular card, do you wish that that card was something else? That's a very important question that you want to ask yourself, especially if you're unsure about a certain card, is that you really want to, whenever you draw it, if you see it in your opening hand, what do you wish it was instead? If there is a particular answer that's coming up a lot, then maybe you should be running that card instead. There are also a lot of situations where you have 2 very similar cards that do very similar things, and you're not really sure which one is better. Maybe you want to play one week, and then the next week you play the other card, and that's definitely a great way of going about it. I will say, however, that theory does play a fairly major part in deck building. No amount of playtesting that you do will come up with the absolute perfect 40 card deck. No amount of test hands, no amount of test games is a perfect sample and is perfectly representative of every game you could ever possibly play. And there are so many cards in the card pool, it's difficult to test them all. So theory not only initially narrows down the pool of cards that you're interested in playtesting, but ultimately some of your decisions as to which cards to play in the decks that you enter in tournaments is really just coming down to having an understanding of the metagame, of the deck you're playing, applying past experience to the deck you're currently playing, and that all just comes with playing the game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, understanding the other decks that you're playing against. A lot of players tend to tunnel vision the deck they're playing, when really when you're going to a tournament, you need to also understand the decks you're playing against, not only for a lot of the technical things while you're playing the actual game, but also so that you make correct card choices when building the deck. It's very difficult to escape the fact that theory crafting is a very important part of Yu-Gi-Oh! I think that's one of the most frustrating things for new players, is that they don't actually often know what's good and what's bad. They don't have a great sense for what makes a good card and what makes a bad card. And again, I will reiterate, really that just comes with experience playing the game, and that is the best advice I can give to you when it comes to playtesting, competitive deck building, making correct card choices. You just need to play the game enough to get to a point that you really build an understanding of good and bad cards. That may be somewhat unsatisfying of an answer. I can't really give you a catch-all, this is how to make the best deck ever, but that's just the truth of it. That's really how most decks are made. A lot of people choose to have very specific playtest partners, something that is one of the main benefits of being on a team. Kind of the quote-unquote pro players have other quote-unquote pro players to play with. I would also recommend, in addition to going to local tournament game stores, if you have friends or make friends who are good at the game and playtest with them, that is an excellent source of practice and preparation for higher level tournaments. And that's, I think, all the main points I want to make for this video. So I'm just gonna, again, like the last one, keep it relatively short, and I will see you guys in the next one. Hopefully I'll have it out a bit quicker than this one relative to the first episode, and I'm not 100% sure which one I'm gonna, which topic I'm gonna talk about in the next episode. I might talk about budget options. I know a lot of players, especially when they're just getting into Yu-Gi-Oh, don't want to spend a ton of money on the game, so I might talk about making budget card choices. But regardless, I hope you enjoyed this one and will enjoy future episodes.